I'm really beat up, guys. I could use a long rest.
Yeah, those last couple of fights really kicked the snot out of us.
I'm not sure. We are in the middle of clearing out the dungeon. Do you think the dungeon master will allow it? Hey, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, what's he gonna do? Throw the whole dungeon at us?
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Luke Hart, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can implement at your table. Recently, in one of my games, the players decided to take a long rest in the middle of a dungeon. This is the story of what happened, along with some lessons that Dungeon Masters can take away from it. And maybe some lessons for cheeky players who think they can take long rests in the middle of dungeons. Alright, to set the context, the group is running against the Giants from Tales from the Yawning Portal, and they are currently in the Hill Giant steading. They have cleared out most of the first level of the Hill Giant steading, and they know that the Chieftain is still alive. In fact, they know that there is an entire second level to the dungeon, that there are still lots of enemies in the dungeon, and that the Chieftain fled to that second level, because maybe he was going there to get reinforcements perhaps. And my players still want to take a long rest in the dungeon.
Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to a long rest. I got stabbed in the bum, you know.
Yeah, you did.
Alright, so we all know that a long rest takes 8 hours. And this will of course give everybody in that dungeon, all of the enemies, a chance to react. And when we consider that the Chieftain is still alive and fled to the second level, we can only envision and imagine what he could possibly be doing. Like maybe rounding up a posse to go hunt down these adventurers. And the players know the Chieftain is still alive, they know there's a second level, and they know that there are possibly reinforcements coming. Enter my Dungeon Master quandary. If I don't have monsters come and interrupt their long rest, they will know that I am not role-playing the monsters properly. I mean, they'll basically know that I'm just giving them a free pass. In fact, one of my players has openly criticized me before for not role-playing enemies properly and for going too easy on them. Not that I let what my players tell me actually influence. Oh, maybe I do. Never mind. Now, if the adventure had actually had more than one adventuring day's worth of enemies in it, and you can go look at Dungeon Master Guide page 84 to find out what exactly an adventuring day's worth of enemies is, then it would have been reasonable to allow a long rest. The basic idea here is that an adventuring day measures roughly how many encounters, how many monsters adventurers are expected to be able to fight before they need to take a long rest. So, if your dungeon has 2 adventuring days worth of monsters in it, then it is completely reasonable for them to need to take a long rest about halfway through the dungeon. Also, if my players had been low on resources and actually did need to rest, I think it would have been a completely different story. But that was not the case. My players had been absolutely mopping up the entire dungeon up until that point, having not expended a whole lot of resources, and I don't really feel that they had earned a long rest. You see, what they were really doing is trying to play it safe, so that they could be at full resources, full hit points, full spell slots, the whole kit and caboodle, before they began going through level 2. And I was not having any of that. I decided to roleplay the enemies properly. There were a whole bunch of bugbears and some other giants down in level 2, and the Hill Giant Chieftain began to organize them to track down the PCs. And as I was role-playing the Hill Giant Chieftain, I was reasoning thusly. I have a bunch of different bugbears. Let's send them out in small groups all over the first level of the dungeon to try to pinpoint where the adventurers are. Once I can pinpoint where the adventurers are, I can have all of my forces swarm on them at once in one last effort to kill them. So basically I was putting myself into the shoes of the Chieftain and reasoning out what my tactics would be in that situation. And so the bugbears began to split up and go all over the dungeon, and one group of them did find the PCs. They got into a little bit of a skirmish, but 2 of the bugbears managed to escape, go back and tell the Chieftain exactly where the PCs were.
Hey! What are they running away for?
Yeah, come back here!
It is logical they would flee. They know they are no match for us. You see, enemies aren't always dumb. Roleplay them according to their intelligence and their battlefield expertise. I mean, in this case, the bugbears fled to go report to the Hill Giant Chieftain, which was the plan all along. If I had had the bugbears stand there and fight to the death, it would have been horrible role-playing, especially considering that the Hill Giant Chieftain had told the bugbears and the rest of the forces that these PCs are invading our steading, and they've slaughtered everybody in the first level already. So the bugbears knew that the players were extremely powerful, and they weren't about to try to take them all by themselves. Alright, so now that the Hill Giant Chieftain knows exactly where the PCs are, he sends 2 groups of his monsters up to ambush them. On one side, you have 2 hill giants and a whole slew of bugbears, and the other side, 2 fire giants accompanied by their own slew of bugbears. The idea is to pincher the PCs, completely obliterating them. However, after having the small skirmish with the bugbears, the players decided to move to a different room, and the Hill Giant Chieftain had not anticipated that, so he sent his forces into motion, and from the new room that the PCs had moved to, they spot the fire giants and the bugbears moving past their room to ambush their previous location. So, the players patiently wait for the fire giants and bugbears to move past them, and then they swoop in from the rear, obliterating them. And then after they clean a swath through the fire giants, they go engage the 2 remaining hill giants and their bugbears, likewise obliterating them. However, the Hill Giant Chieftain is still alive. It is imperative that we find the Hill Giant Chieftain, who knows what mischief he could be up to.
I don't know. Do you know?
It's a figure of speech, you idiot!
Alright, now an alternative to sending the entire dungeon at the players would have been to simply send a hard or deadly encounter at them. Of course, one might argue that the entire dungeon was a deadly encounter too. But just sending one little group of enemies at them would not have been role-playing the monsters correctly. I really was thinking that my players are experienced enough, and they are, to know better than try to take a long rest in the middle of a dungeon that is already alerted to their presence. I mean, really, am I asking too much here? I chose to have no mercy, and my players did just fine. Which kind of proves that they didn't really need to take a long rest to begin with. But my point is this. Don't be afraid to roleplay your enemies faithfully. Expect your players to use their brains and work to overcome the challenges that you set before them. Your players may surprise you. They may also get slaughtered, but they will definitely learn something. Now, obviously, use your brains and discretion as a dungeon master too. I'm not saying that you should always throw entire dungeons at them. That would be absolutely crazy and would definitely fall into the category of things that weighing rod dungeon masters do to their players. But my point is that it is an option to be exercised when you feel it is correct to do so, and when you have counted the cost. And here's another little tip too. If you're going to do something crazy, like throw the whole dungeon at them, give them a way out. Be just a little bit merciful to them. In this case, I rewarded their vigilance by allowing them to spot the fire giant ambush coming after them, so that they could then turn around and ambush the ambush. Be nasty, but also be generous too. And as far as what happened to the Hill Giant Chieftain, the players may never know.
Wait, why not? That's not fair.
Yeah, I call Dungeon Master BS on that.
I use a divination spell to...
Never mind. We're actually good here, right?
Yeah, all good here.
Now, I have found that being able to run fast-paced combats helps make battles more interesting and fun for my players. Click right here on the screen to learn 10 ways to prevent your battles from becoming boring snooze fests that take forever to resolve.
And until next time,
Let's play D&D.